The Murder Shelf Book Club contains disturbing content related to real-life crimes. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to the Murder Shelf Book Club podcast. I am your host, Jill. This is episode 112, my exclusive interview with investigative journalist George Jared, one of the authors of Silent Silhouette, Who Killed Deborah Sue, a terrific true crime book about an unsolved murder case, which I have been featuring the last few weeks on the podcast. So please check out episodes 108 to 111, because this case can be solved. I always love bringing the authors to you so that you can hear from them directly. And if you think his name sounds familiar, George Jared has been a presenter at CrimeCon. So without further ado, let me welcome him and talk about his investigation into this unsolved case. George, welcome to the Murder Shelf Book Club podcast. I am thrilled that you're doing this in the middle of the holidays and everything else. I am very happy to be doing your book.
Well, I'm very happy to be here talking about our book with you.
I knew nothing about this case, Deborah Sue Williamson. I have not heard it. It's not one of those that rolls off the podcast or true crime tongue, that's for sure. How did you find out about this case? I mean, how did that evolve?
So what happened is my writing partner and my investigative partner, Jennifer Bucholtz, and I were at CrimeCon in 2021 in Austin, Texas, giving a presentation about the Rebekah Gould murder case. It was a case out of Arkansas where we actually lured her killer onto a Facebook page. It had been unsolved for 16 years. And so CrimeCon asked us to come and do a presentation about this guy because he had been communicating with us on a Facebook page for a year before he got arrested. And the detective in the case was following him on our page with an anonymous account. Yeah. And so, yeah, it was crazy. And so we're at CrimeCon, and a lot of families are approaching us, with different unsolved cases. Most of them are murder cases, obviously. And so Jennifer's like, hey, could we replicate this again? Could we do this again? Because we spent about a year and a half working on Rebekah's case. In all fairness, I had been on Rebekah's case from day one. I was there the day her body was found in 2004. And so, but Jennifer and I teamed up in 2019 to work on it because she has a lot of, she's a criminology professor. She also teaches forensics. She's a civilian investigator for a local sheriff's department. She was a counterintelligence officer in the U.S. or agent. Sorry, I always say officer, but it's Jennifer, it's agent. I know. So she had a vast amount of experience, especially in behavioral analysis. And so we decided to team up. We had probably 4 cases we were vetting. And, everything just seemed to click with Deborah Sue Williamson's case. As soon as we decided on it, I told Jennifer, I said, in full disclosure, I was actually born in Lubbock, Texas, where this happened. I didn't grow up in Lubbock. I actually grew up in Oregon. And so that's when we started down this path in June of 2021. And it culminated with us going to Lubbock, Texas, the week, like she was murdered on August 24th, 1975. And so that week in August, she traveled from Colorado. I traveled from the Mississippi Delta region, and we met up in Lubbock to tackle this case.
It seems very intertwined with Rebekah's story, CrimeCon, running into people at CrimeCon. I ran into you at CrimeCon. These are relationships that are made and things like this happen. And I think it's a phenomenal thing that you did in Rebekah's case. And thank you for trying to replicate it. Because why wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. That was kind of our thought process too. There was a couple of things that were appealing about Debbie's case to us. The first thing is it has to be solvable for us to take on a case, because we've taken on several now through the years. And we thought her case was solvable. The family did have access to some of the contemporaneous police reports. And so we thought that would be useful because, most of the time when a cold case gets solved, and the exact same thing happened to Rebekah's case, a new detective comes in, They go back to the case file and they say, okay, what was missed? And usually there's something that was missed. And in Rebekah's case, there was something missed. There was this, this cousin of the sort of ex-boyfriend who should have been looked at harder. And they just kind of took a cursory look at him. And so we knew they had the case files. And so we wanted to go through it. But at the same time, we also wanted to create our own case file. Like, just because the police interviewed a witness back in 1975, we wanted to go and interview those same people ourselves and ask the questions we wanted to ask.
Yeah, I think you did. And I think you did it well. I was quite frankly amazed that everybody seemed fairly eager to speak with you. You have a couple people who don't want to, but you got people to talk, to cooperate, to at least it seems so to me.
Yeah, pretty much every person we wanted to talk to, for the most part. There were a couple, like you said, that didn't want to talk. And a lot of those people, we didn't tell them we were coming. We just knocked on their door. In one instance, one of the suspects in the case, Paul, he went on a date with a woman named Tina that night, the night of the murder. And so she lives literally out in the middle of nowhere, Texas. I mean, we drove for miles and miles. Like one day when we were in Lubbock, Jennifer's like, hey, we got to go talk to this Tina woman. I said, okay. And so we drove out into the Texas desert. We were on a trail we pulled off. It was not a gravel road. It was a trail. I mean, there was longhorns and oil jacks bobbing up and down. And, the big windmills were going. And there was one-eyed Susans as far as the eye could see. At one point, we were coming we saw a vista. And I looked at her and I said, I'm just waiting for John Wayne to come flying through here on a horse and some Indians shooting arrows at him. I mean, it was insane. And it was really weird because we came up to this kind of rundown house. And we pull up and we thought maybe this was her house. And we knock on the door and there's all these bleached animal skulls all over the yard. And and we knock on the door and this guy comes out and he looked like there was something, like he was inebriated or something. And we're like, hey, does Tina live here? And he doesn't say a word to us. He just points off into the distance. And we saw this really pretty ranch style house, that was several miles away because you can see forever out there.
Yeah.
And so we said, thank you. He didn't say one word to us. He slams the door in our faces and we get in my car and Jennifer goes, wow, that was kind of scary. And I looked at her and I said, you fought the Taliban in Afghanistan. What do you mean that was scary? And so we get in my car and I'm in a Mustang convertible, by the way. So it wasn't like we were in some 4-wheel drive truck or something. And so we drive down to this house. This guy is outside. They had an AstroTurf front yard because you can't grow grass out there, obviously. And this guy's playing with his dog and he's looking at us. He was more curious about, I could tell, he didn't say it, but I could tell by the way he was looking. He was more curious about how we got my car down to his house than he was about why we were even there. These two strange people just show up. And we go to the front door and we said, hey, is Tina here? And he goes, yeah, she's inside making lunch. Go on in. We're like, okay. So we open up the door and we walk in and she looks at us and she goes, you're here to talk about Deborah Sue Williamson. And we said, yes. And she goes, and you want to know how Paul acted that night, don't you? And we said, yes, we do.
Wow. Yeah. That's incredible. Wow. You literally went that extra mile, probably 100.
Yeah. Yeah. Literally.
Literally. Oh my gosh. I thought she seemed very forthright. Again, eager to tell you what her perspective was on Paul.
Mm-hmm.
I do have lots of questions about Paul, but there was something that I wanted to ask you about Tina. The timing. Tina and the timing.
Mm-hmm.
Paul called her from work at 9:30 p.m. No way.
That's what he claims. So he told police originally that the night of the murder, he clocked out. He said he left at 9:10. And then we know that he arrived somewhere between 9:50 and 10 o'clock to pick her up. The problem is we have his time card, which says he clocked out at 8:41. So automatically that changes the time frame. And then Tina was very adamant that at 9:30 that night, she received a phone call from him and he said he was still at work.
Yeah, that to me is odd. You said that she was still somewhat annoyed, 46 years later, that he was late. Which to me, that lends credibility, because a memory like that you've attached that kind of emotion to, it's to set into those neurons versus I don't know, I left between, I don't know, maybe it was this time or that time. Something like that, when you get your emotion wrapped up in those neurons, it sets. And it sounds like that is that kind of memory for her. I mean, why would she make it up?
That's exactly right. And it was so interesting, too, because Jennifer and I are obviously, I'm a professional interviewer. She's a professional interviewer. I've been doing this for many, many years in many different realms. And one thing about when you're interviewing somebody live is you're obviously watching their body language. And when we got into the car, one of the first things we talked about as we drove away was her physical reaction when she was telling that story. You could tell by her posture and her mannerisms that she was very, very upset to this day that he was that late. And she remembered, and it's so interesting too, because she also disagreed with the police timeline. She said that he got there just before 10 o'clock, that he was there like 9:50, 9:55. And because the police said that in their reports that he had arrived a little after 10. And she said, no, he was here around 9:50, 9:55. I know for a fact.
Okay. I tend to believe her.
Yeah, me too.
I believe that. I'm glad you're confirming the sense that I had on just reading the book, not reading the woman, which is why I'm so glad to talk to you.
Absolutely.
So, Paul, what was he doing there? Because remember, he asked to leave early because he has a date. He asked Doug, I'm going to leave at 8, winds up checking out or punching out at 8:43. And he says he didn't leave till 9:10. Because I'm going to work for free, as no one does. No one did that. I used to punch in. I worked at parties. I worked at a burger place.
Yeah.
Punch in, you punch out, you leave. He has a date, so he's going to hang out.
Well, and there's also another element here too. Let's say hypothetically he clocks out, but he hangs around for another 20 minutes or so. The problem is that at 9 o'clock they get slammed. So if he's still there, even if he's off the clock, Doug's going to say, hey, you need to go clock back in. I need help. Doug told us, the waitress who worked that night told us, they were slammed. They were unusually busy after Paul left. He asks to take a shower at Doug's house, knowing Debbie's there. And then when he finds out Debbie's there, he says, no, I don't want to take a shower. She's there by herself. So, I ask people all the time when I'm talking about this case, how many people have asked to take a shower at their ex's new married house?
That not in my lifetime have I been aware of something like that. No. That's odd.
Yes.
That also makes me think he makes this request to take the shower. I don't know where he thought Debbie was, but now he's not going to go. Now later he says to Jennifer that he took a shower there after the lake trip the day before.
Yes, he actually told Jennifer and I both that he took a shower there the Saturday, because the murder happens on a Sunday night. The Saturday before, they all go on this lake trip out to Buffalo Lake near Lubbock, and they're out water skiing. Debbie was a very avid water skier, and he claims that after they got done water skiing, he went back with Doug to their house and took a shower, but we know that that's not true because in the contemporaneous police reports, it says that there was 5 or 7 of them. It was just a group of people their age. Debbie's parents had a cabin on that lake, and they all went back to her parents' cabin, and they all took showers there. And it's so interesting. If you look at Doug's time card and you look at Paul's time card, the Saturday, they get to work exactly the same time as they punched in on Sunday, like to the minute. Yeah, no, he took a shower at that cabin, and then obviously told us this other story about how he took it at the house. And it's also interesting, too, is that he remembers where and when he took a shower all those years ago, but he conveniently forgets about the fact that him and Debbie had sort of dated and that her mother told the police that he had continuously after they sort of, because they kind of, when I say they dated, they would go like to the movies together, they would do stuff together, but they weren't a couple, they were friends, and he wanted to be more than friends. And he would bring her little stuffed animals and other little trinkets to try to, I guess, woo her over. And at one point, he even went up to Debbie's mom and said, "Why doesn't Debbie love me?" And she's like, "I don't know what to tell you." And so then immediately, as soon as Doug becomes available, she starts dating Doug. And immediately, as soon as his girlfriend, and we tracked that girlfriend down too. Very nice lady. She had these two really cute dogs that sat in my lap while we were interviewing her and her husband. And the police interviewed her back in the day because, she was the former lover. So it would be reasonable to interview her. Yeah. And he literally claimed, he said, well, maybe we don't. I asked him, I said, so you and her you were really into her, you really liked her. He says, we might have went out for a drink or something like that. And I said, you were in high school and she was 17. So no, you didn't go out for a drink.
Mm-hmm. I've noticed a lot of inconsistencies, and they all seem to float around Paul.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to be factual here. I'm trying not to run off into speculation, but inconsistencies are all about Paul's statements. He didn't really date Debbie. They just went out for a drink, but he's talking to her mother about why doesn't she love me?
Mm-hmm.
He told you too, he denied that he didn't remember if he went to the wedding.
Right. He said he didn't remember, but he didn't go to the wedding because he wasn't invited, which is odd because he'd been friends with Doug probably since junior high. And then he was friends with Debbie as well. And he wasn't invited to the wedding. And so then he was working out of town all summer. And then he returns to Lubbock on or about August 7th of that year, which is approximately 2 weeks before she gets murdered. And he needs a job. And so he asks Doug, and Doug says, well, I need a cook. So Doug is, the manager of this Pizza Inn. And so he hires Paul 2.5 weeks before the murder to come and work for him. And so you can imagine the scenario for any young man. This guy is his boss now, and this guy is with the girl that he was in love with. Not happy, I mean, that doesn't mean he killed her. I mean, no one's saying that, but it's just, the facts are the facts.
That's what I mean. I'm just looking at the facts. So he denies to you that he dated Debbie. They just hung out. But you also asked him, or you quote him as saying, well, I wish she'd picked me. And I'm like, wait a minute, bud. Why, if you weren't into her, if you really didn't date her, you just went out a couple times, why did you wish, it doesn't bother him, but why do you wish she picked you instead of Doug? Why would that even be a thought if, they went out for a drink? That made no sense. Absolutely no sense.
Yeah, no, it doesn't make any sense. It's because, he clearly, it was clear to the police in 1975. Ricky, her brother, was their top suspect for the simple fact that he had been convicted of some drug stuff in the past. And, he had slapped her, they're siblings, and they were teenagers, and he slapped her one time a year or so before that. But it's clear from the original case file, he was polygraphed multiple times. And Tina told us, she leaves for college. This happens on August 24th. She leaves town to go to college. She's a freshman, and she leaves for about a month. And then she comes back for a college football game, and she sees him. And she said he wasn't a very big guy to begin with. And she said he looked like he'd lost 25 pounds. And he kept telling everybody, I'm their primary suspect. They're coming after me. It's because they kept questioning him because they knew that he had this affection for her that she did not reciprocate to him. And his whereabouts during the window when she's murdered, the only person who alibied him was himself.
Yeah. Yeah. That missing hour and 17 minutes, I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's, again, I have to wonder about that. Well, I don't want to feel like we're ganging up on Paul, but again, I'm looking at the facts. But I want to ask you, what do you think happened? I hate to speculate, but a likely scenario of a killer in this situation, in this carport, what do you think happened?
What I think happened is that she knew the person who killed her, that the person was aware that she was by herself, and the person showed up. This was emotional. I think that, if you read the book, we go through her injury pattern. It's pretty clear to us, and actually doing doing experiments on the ground at the house where this happened was very beneficial because, when you get an autopsy report, you see it. She was stabbed 17 times, but the wounds didn't make sense, especially to me, because, there was this thought process that she was fighting back and there was this, battle between her and this person that killed her. But when you looked at her stab wounds, and I kept telling, everybody this, they're clean. It's in, out, in, out. The knife is coming in and out. It's like she's not even moving. And so we couldn't figure that out. And so when we did our experiment, we figured out pretty quickly that someone, more than likely, there's one wound to her rib that goes through her rib cage and pierces her heart. That was the first wound. And I know people are listening. I just want you to kind of visualize this. Let's say she's coming out the back door. She's got her purse around her right shoulder. You know how a person will carry their purse. Her puzzle book is in the purse. And then someone comes up to confront her that she knows. And she's like, I've had it. She throws up that left arm and says, like anybody, like you would do, don't talk to me. You're trying to create space between you and that person. And when she throws up that arm, someone with a dagger along the outer forearm here, and to tell you how easy it is, and this is a military style dagger, to tell you how easy it is to conceal a dagger like that, our knife expert, who actually was in the book too, talking about her wounds and the knife, he came to my house to do a podcast one time. And he came in, and he was sitting in my living room, and we walked around a little bit, and we came into my office, and we're getting ready to record. The entire time he was in my house, he had a knife up against his forearm, and none of us, my podcast producer, anybody, wife, anybody that was here, no one noticed it. And he goes, I said to him, I said, how hard would, his name is Jeff. I said, Jeff, how hard would it be to conceal something like that? He goes, oh, you mean like this? And he immediately brandished it. And I was like, wow. So what we think happened is that she got stabbed through the heart. Instinctively, she took off running. And there's actually videos of people being stabbed like this. And they will run for about 15 or 20 feet. And that's how far she got before they will go into complete cardiac arrest. They'll pass out, hit the ground. And then the killer jumped on her back, and most of her wounds are to her back. And so then the killer just, in a rage, is just stabbing her and stabbing her and stabbing her. And then we think that the killer pulled her pants down and pulled her shirt up as a way to stage it, like make it seem like the motive was something that it wasn't. Also interesting is that she had $140 in her purse, which was a lot of money back then. And whoever killed her took the $140, but left her wedding rings. Yeah, weirdly. And also nothing was taken out of the house. And this is just my belief. I believe whoever killed her knew that she had that money in the purse, because the reason she had the money in the purse is because Doug had bought a CB radio earlier that week, and he had taken the money out of the till at the store, which was okay. They were allowed to do that, but they had to, replace it before Sunday. So she had the money to replace it. And then, of course, this ridiculous, they break the window with the garden hoe. And I mean, if you saw this window, I mean, a little kid would have a hard time crawling through this window. It was just ridiculous. So it was an unsophisticated crime. It was a crime of passion. I believe she knew her killer. If it was some stranger that had knocked on that back door, she wouldn't have gone out there.
Right.
I mean, she's not going, she's running through she's running through her house to her front door, which leads to the road. Instead, she's going to come out the carport. She's confronted by somebody she knows. I think that's just pretty obvious.
Yeah, and she's like, why are you here? Did something happen? You have a message for me? What? Something. Yeah. That's pretty much what I envisioned. And I will share with you that in reading through the parts of the wounds and the patterns, I was in my kitchen with my knife, kind of, through the motions and it does help because you envision what you've seen on TV.
Mm-hmm.
And here I'm like, how would I do this? How would I move? How would I turn? I think that helped a lot. I think this killer absolutely knew he was going there to kill her. There's no doubt in my mind about that. Whether it was, I can't have you, nobody else can either. That's not uncommon. And I went a little further than that. I think he brought a change of clothes. I think he had it stashed somewhere in the car or there. That I think when he attacked her, he did get bloody. I think he stripped, took a shower, which is why they find the wet towels in the bathroom, came out, dressed. The bag that he had the change of clothes in, he put the bloody clothes in, dragged her, positioned her, all of that was done prior. But I think that was what happened, because would you want to take your bloody clothes and get in your car? Now you've got a bloody car. Now you have to clean up a bloody car, and now you have paper towels and bleach in your car, and now you've got more of a mess, which makes no sense. This guy, he's not a sophisticated killer by any means. I'm talking a paper bag and a World War II dagger. But I think he thought that much about it, because he really wanted to do this. It said this is personal and this is emotional. Yeah.
Totally agree.
So I'm like, how do you get bloody and get away? And how do you not track blood through a house to go take a shower? You strip right there.
Right.
It's dark. You went through that. This scene is so dark that night. So it's not like he has to worry about the mobs of people in the neighborhood, non-existent, coming by. And I think that's what he did.
Yeah, and it was so crazy, too, because there was actually one neighbor that lived out there. And Jennifer actually went and talked to her. She still lived out there to this. I don't know if it's to this day, but when we talked to her, she talked to this neighbor. And the neighbor had reported to police that she heard something like she thought was like a car wreck or something going on. And this neighbor was in her 90s at this point when Jennifer talked to her, and she recalled the same story, and it was spot on to what she recalled from that night.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a case that's begging to be solved. The puzzle pieces are there. Any news on the DNA testing?
No, there's been no update. Lubbock PD, like many law enforcement agencies, we had worked with them some on this, but it pretty much got to the point where they were like, hey, we can't really tell you anything more than you already know. My suspicion is, they exhumed her body last year to look for evidence, which I'm just going to be honest with you, and Jennifer and I are in complete agreement about this. It was more of a dog and pony show, because her body had been completely cleaned up after the autopsy. And I'll tell you why they did it, is because there was a belief in the Lubbock PD that Ricky did it, her brother, and that he stashed the knife inside her coffin during her funeral. And so they thought, well, we'll just, exhume it and see if the knife is in there. And of course it wasn't, which is unfortunate. But, I don't ever give up hope on these things, because I've had other cold cases where nothing was being done. They had made up their minds, and then something changed. Some shoe fell and something changed. And I think that there is a dynamic in this case that we haven't revealed yet. It may be involving another stabbing case in Lubbock that may open a door to possibly getting this thing solved.
Yeah, I'm going to pray it gets solved. It seems like there's so many pieces of that puzzle available. I'm going to hope the DNA does show something. They test some of the evidence there. You would think even her clothing, that he touched those pants, there was touching of the shirt. MVAC is an amazing tool, so I'm going to keep my fingers crossed. Yeah.
In Lubbock, I will give them credit. They've had one or two cases, and I say recently, like within the last year or so, that were very, very older cases, not quite as old as Debbie's case, but within a couple of years, that they actually did get solved. There's a possibility. I mean, this is the weird thing about her case. So many different agencies handled evidence in her case. Like you were talking about, like her clothing that she was wearing. Obviously, the killer touched her stuff. And this is 1975. So literally blood typing was about all you could do back then. I mean, that was DNA testing.
Yeah.
And so there would be no even thought process that if I touch this someday, 40, 50 years from now, they'll be able to extract skin cells that I left in these jeans or on this belt or whatever. But it's possible. But here's the other problem is this is one of the reasons I think the PD doesn't like talking about this case, is I think they have lost some of the evidence. But if it's lost, it could be lost inside an evidence locker room with another agency. So that doesn't mean it's lost forever. It may have just been lost for now. So hopefully they'll come across it.
Yeah, it's kind of frustrating. Hey, if they handed off the case file to the parents and really didn't have a case file for God knows how many years, God knows what they did with the evidence. But like you said, it's lost, mislabeled. Somebody forgets that they gave it to the Rangers or, whatever have you. But I'm going to pray that it gets solved. It's like I said, it's solvable. It is solvable.
And Jennifer and I always have this theory too. We always say this: you're not going to commit a crime like this and not tell somebody. Somebody knows. And in fact, there are a couple of people that we've tried to talk to who we think do know what happened, and they are aware of what happened, and they're just not talking right now, and they just need to do the right thing and come forward and let all of us know exactly what happened to Deborah Sue.
It should be the hero. You can still be the hero of the story here. Say, I didn't talk about it. I was concerned, whatever your reasoning, but I'm going to be the hero and tell you what happened. I'm going to go with that. Anything else, George, that you want to add? What are you doing next?
Well, I'm writing another book on West Memphis 3. I don't know if I told you this, but I interviewed Terry Hobbs, the stepdad.
I was aware of that, yes.
Okay. And so we gave a presentation at CrimeCon in 2022, and we played the interview for the crowd, and Jim Clemente, he analyzed the interview on stage. And so, and Terry doesn't want the evidence tested. He said that. Now, he's made some public pronouncements since then that he wants it tested, but he wants all the evidence in the case tested. But he literally told me and Justin Rimmel, another podcaster, that he didn't want the evidence tested. I mean, you can hear him say it with his own mouth. And so he's backtracking now. And so now that they're to the point where they're going to do the touch DNA testing, like I talked to Eccles, there's a guy named Lonnie Surrey. He's kind of like a spokesperson for them. He's like a PR guy. He lives in New York, and Lonnie's a great guy. I've known him for years. So I contacted him a few weeks ago, and he said they're going to try to test more than just the shoelaces. So they're going to try to test some of the hairs, retest some of the hairs. Because, you can, the DNA testing on those hairs is so much better now. And Jennifer and I are working on a book about Rebekah's case, because that case is literally the most insane. Can't believe it. I mean, and it started off, and I hate that I said this, Jill, but I did before. I've covered so many wild, interesting cases. And literally, the original story we were told about Rebekah was she was bonked on the head with a piano leg.
Yep.
And her body was thrown on the side of the road. There was no sexual assault. There was nothing to it. It was just an assault that went wrong, and she died. And so for years, I would say I hate I ever said it was a whole home murder. And I could never have been more dead wrong. I mean, this case, it gets, the family angles on it are crazy. Like her family, the killer's family. I mean, we still talk to Jeremy, William Miller, the killer, his brother. We talk to him all the time.
Just that's incredible.
Yeah.
And I happen to like true crime books. So when is this book coming forth?
We're working on it now. It'll be sometime next year. This is the granddaddy of all the books we're going to write, because this is the one. It is, when I tell people the full story from beginning to end, they are gobsmacked, like jaw on the floor. They're like, this can't be real. And I'm like, it is. I can't make this up. I mean, and my personal connections to it too are so wild. So I was out there when they found her body. I'm the one that told her father, Dr. Larry Gould, that she had been found. Like, I drove from the scene, and she was very badly decomposed. She was wearing a t-shirt and panties. You could see her belly button ring, and like literally half of her skull half of her face was a skeleton. And I go back to the sheriff department, which is only a couple of miles away from the spot where she's found, by the way. And Dr. Gould comes up to me, and he goes, I get out of my truck. He goes, did they find my daughter? And I'd known this guy for 5 days at this point. And his name is Larry. And I said, Larry, you need to go talk to the sheriff right now. And then he grabs a hold of me and says, did they find my daughter? And I said, there is no other missing woman in this county. and he starts crying, and he like literally buries his head in my stomach. And he'll tell you this, even when my dad died, one of the first people to text me was him. And he'll tell you this, for many, many years, it was just me and him. There was no one else worried about her case. You know, I would write stories about it for free. I'd give them to the Associated Press, let them run them all over the country, and nobody cared. And then when that Hell and Gone podcast came out in 2018, Catherine Townsend. Catherine emailed me one day out of the blue. I didn't know her from Jack. And she said, "Hey, my name is Catherine Townsend. I'm a reporter for Discovery Channel. I want to do a podcast on Rebekah Gould's murder." And she said, "Would you be willing to help?" And I said, "Yeah." And so I was in probably 4, maybe 5, I don't remember how many episodes with her. And what it did is it kind of created like a furor. And so like all these people would join these Facebook pages and were fighting. The family members were on there. You know, the sort of ex-boyfriend, Casey, you know, his family members were on there, his sister-in-laws and his brothers, because, you know, Catherine pretty much pointed the finger at him or someone in his family. And that's how Jennifer even found out about me. Is she heard me on that podcast, and she emailed me one day and said, "Hey, can we talk for like 5 minutes about this case? I think the police are missing some stuff." Because I had argued for years. I had a book signing at Dr. Gould's office in 2016 one time. Mm-hmm. And the lead detective in the case came in. His name was Dennis. And he came in, and he was kind of like wearing these like Daisy Duke cutoff shorts and like this flannel cutoff. I was like, what is this guy wearing? And so he's in line. Number one, he's a guy, which guys don't buy true crime books. So unless they're buying it for their wife or their girlfriend.
Yes.
And
exactly.
So I pitch him the book when he comes through, and he says, "No, I don't want to buy a book." And he pulls out his badge and he goes, "Hi, I'm Special Agent, Dennis Simons with the Arkansas State, blah, blah, blah." And I looked at him, I said, "Oh yeah, I haven't seen you in about 10 years," because I'd seen him in court, because he used to be a narcotics officer. And I said, "What are you doing here?" And he goes, "Well, I just want to know what you know about this case." And I said, "Well, next time just call me and I'll tell you everything I know about it." Yeah. And so there was a couple parts of it that we couldn't understand. Her body was moved from the house. Mm-hmm. The killer tried to clean up the mess. You know, the bloody sheets were found in the washing machine, but her dog is there uninjured, her Pomeranian. Her car is there, keys there, money there, all of her clothes, suitcase, all of her stuff is there. And the piano leg is missing from the piano. And so we're just like, this is behavioral. Whoever killed her had a connection to this house. Mm-hmm. Because he kept telling me it was a druggie, that some druggie that she knew from high school, that she, and she wasn't even, there was no evidence that she was on any kind of drug. She was in college. I mean, she smoked marijuana, but I mean, And so I asked him, I said, "Dennis, this is just really weird to me, because if it was a druggie that had no connection to this house, why did he move her body when all he has to do is take a match and burn this place to the ground?" And this is the thing about assassins. They come with a gun. I've covered those too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they come with a gun. And he could never explain that to me because it didn't make any sense, obviously. And so Jennifer saw it the same way. And so our first phone conversation was 3 hours and 21 minutes.
I believe it.
Yeah. And she came to Arkansas, dragged her poor husband, Jesse, dragged him. I mean, she's dragged him all over the country, paying for stuff and all these murder cases that we go on. Last time I was at their house this summer in Colorado, right before I was getting ready to leave, I gave him a big hug. I said, "Man, I'm so happy that you put up with mine and Jennifer's crap," because most people wouldn't.
I have a similar husband. I'm at CrimeCon and I'm setting up Podcast Row, and he's schlepping all the T-shirts and all the stuff down. And yeah, he's a good guy. He puts up with me. Yeah.
That's nice. Well, you were a teacher for 30 years, so you earned it.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Well, fun fact about William Miller.
Yeah.
He confessed in Cottage Grove, Oregon, which is an hour from where I grew up, of all the places in all the world, because he was living in the Philippines, but he couldn't get back in the Philippines during COVID because he wasn't a national. And so he had to come back, and his mom and brother just coincidentally had moved to Cottage Grove, Oregon. And he confessed to her murder on my birthday.
Oh my God.
6 degrees of separation. Wow. I'm speechless. Wow. Well, I want you back when the book comes out, because I can't wait to read this one. I mean, listen, I love all your books, but I'm really excited. I think everyone needs to read Silent Silhouette because this case is solvable. I think you got to read the next one that comes out on Rebekah Gould. No question about it.
Yeah, and I went and interviewed that clown in prison. So, and then he tried to come up with he had child porn on his phone when he went in to the police department. Yeah,
Whoa.
Yeah, so he literally would have went to jail for 50 years just for the child porn. And I asked him, and I asked questions. I mean, I don't hold back. I said, so I want you to explain to me, William, how is it that you walked into a police department to be interviewed about a murder case in Arkansas and you had child porn on your phone? And he said, well, I was molested as a kid, so I was doing research.
No. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. Well, George, thank you.
You're very welcome.
I have enjoyed this immeasurably and all the insights into everything. So I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. If you ever want to chat about West Memphis 3, I mean, I'm sure Dan gave you an earful on it already, but one thing about it, I always tell people that and it's not because I am a journalist,
right.
I get the perspective of everything. You know, like there's a limited perspective because of his job. I mean, he can't go and talk to jurors afterwards. I have. In fact, I nearly got into a fight with the jury foreman in Eccles Baldwin at the gym. Yeah, he worked out at the same gym as me. Judge Laser, who let them out, worked out at my gym too. Yeah, I'd ride the bike and talk to the case with him. Yeah. So, and then Judge Burnett was mad at me for 3 or 4 years because I wrote about it. And then he decided to run for state senate. So then he had to get buddy back with me because I also write a lot about politics and I cover it statewide. So all of a sudden we were homies again.
Yeah. Judge Burnett is not a favorite of mine. I had a few very descriptive choice words that I used for him. I'm not a fan. That is not what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
So, all right, man. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Yeah.
Let me know when it comes out and I'll share it to social media.
Oh, I will absolutely let you know. Can't wait. This is going to be a labor of love to go back over this in my head. Yeah. I appreciate your time and you're absolutely wonderful. I'm so glad you wore that t-shirt.
I almost wore it for this. I was sitting in my closet. I was like, I should wear it for this.
Well, I did say in the episodes, I said, I saw a t-shirt and we started talking. I said, but if you want to see the t-shirt, I said, it's in my picture on my blog. You got to go check it out. So
there you go.
There you go. Traffic, man. All right. All right, George, be good. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jill. Have a wonderful night.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye now. Well, there you have it, Murder Bookies. I appreciate George coming on and taking time from this busy holiday season to chat with me. Please read Silent Silhouette for all of the details about the murder of Deborah Sue Williamson back on August 24th, 1975. Join the Facebook group, The Unsolved Murder of Deborah Sue Williamson, Debbie Agnew. This case can be solved. We have so many pieces of the puzzle. And if hearing this has stirred up an echo of a memory, something slumbering from way back when, please call Crime Line at 806-741-1000 or the Lubbock Police Department directly at 806-775-2865. Thank you for listening. And my next true crime book is The Baby Doll Serial Killer, The John Eric Armstrong Homicides by R.B. Bates and Gerald Cliff. Now, this is a serial killer that I had never heard of before. A nice guy, quiet, reserved, Eric as he was called, was never in trouble. But deep within him, a malignant force lurked, concealed from everyone. Trolling for prey on Detroit's Prostitution Alley, Michigan Avenue, he picked up women who were taken in by his boyish demeanor and never heard from again. This true crime book by Bates and Cliff, who is the officer who headed this investigation, has so many details and is so incredibly comprehensive, you feel you are a part of the team rather than just a reader or a listener. So do not miss my next book, The Baby Doll Killer. We are starting 2025 strong. Thank you for being with me on our journey together into the cases, the updates, the analysis. It is a joy to be doing this. Email me at jill@murdershelfbookclub.com or find me on X, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or join me on Patreon and help me pick out my next book. As always, we can talk true crime. I see you as you hear me. See you in 2 weeks. Written and produced by Jill, all rights reserved. Music, The Pewter Elephant by Blue Dot Sessions.